Hello there! This video will show you how to create grouped frequency distributions using the pivot tables function in Microsoft Excel 2016. So there's several ways to do this, but using the pivot tables makes it pretty easy. And really, the only time you need to do this is when you have a situation where you want to examine the frequencies for a variable, but your variable has a really wide range. So it won't really make sense to have a separate row for each value in your data set because your table will just be too big. So again, whenever you have a situation where the variable that you want to assess the frequencies of has a really wide range, a grouped frequency distribution table is a really good way to do it. Okay, so for this particular example, we are going to look at age and income. So both of those are variables that have a pretty wide range, and I'm going to do a grouped frequency distribution table for each and also do a histogram for each separately. We're not looking at the two together, we're just going to look at age and then separately annual income. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of steal these two variables. So Control C. And I'm going to go here, push this little plus sign to create a new tab, and just Control V to paste those in. And I'm going to rename this Prep for GFD, Grouped Frequency Distribution, and just hit Enter. So remember, before you can create a grouped frequency distribution table, you need to figure out what size your groups are going to be and then determine the start value and the end value in your data set. So the first thing that you need to do this is do that 2k 2 to the exponent of k is greater than or equal to n. So essentially, we're trying to figure out what exponent of 2 will give us a value that is greater than or equal to 100 because we have 100 people in this data set. You see this goes to 101, but that's because the first row is the labels. So the first thing I'm going to do is try to figure out kind of roughly how many groups I'm going to have using that 2 to the exponent of k greater than or equal to n convention. So you'll see how that works. I'm just going to put a 2 here. And then over here, I'm going to put some potential k values or potential exponents that will give me a value that's greater than or equal to 100. So I'm just going to do like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. So over here, I'm going to just put kind of a label, 2k. All right. And let's see, can I do a subscript here? All right, let's do a superscript here because this K should be up top. So I'm going to click this little font and we're going to do a superscript so that it's up top. Oh, how pretty. All right, cool. So now let's do this. Hit the equal sign, click on this 2, and then hit the F4 key. If you don't have the F4 key, then you could just do this. Click it and then put a $sign before the D and a $sign before the 2. So do that and then click. If you hold down Shift and get this little caret to do a exponent, click this. So by doing the little $signs, that locks this value in, and then we're going to copy this formula down, and it's going to lock in this 2, but it's going to substitute this second value for whatever is in the row that's next, or whatever's in the cell next to it. So let's hit Enter. Oh, yep, 2 squared is indeed 4. Now you grab this 4, click see the little box at the bottom right corner here. Wait till you get a plus sign, click and drag down, and you get 2 squared, 2 cubed, 2 to the 4th power, 2 to the 5th power, 2 to the 6th power, 2 to the 7th power, and 2 to the 8th power. So that's easier than doing it manually. So remember, we're looking for what exponent of 2 gives us a value that is equal to or greater than our sample size, which is 100. And if we look here, that's below 100, and then we get here, oh, that is the first value that is greater than or equal to 100. So that is roughly going to be how many groups we will have in our grouped frequency distribution table. So now the next step that we need to do is we need to figure out the minimum and the maximum for our age and for our annual income. And real quick, just so that these labels don't go away, if you go to View, Freeze Panes, Freeze Top Row, check it out. When I scroll down, you still see age and annual income. So that's pretty cool. You still see this 2K thing too. And let's just put a little reminder that we're going to do 7 as our K. And let's unsubscript that real quick. Okay, so let's go down to the bottom here. And we're going to have our minimum, our maximum. So basically, what's the highest and lowest value in our data set? Once we find those, we're going to find the difference between those. Because remember, whenever you're doing a grouped frequency distribution table, the way to figure out roughly the width of your groups is to take your your highest value minus your lowest value, and then divide that by k, which in this case is going to be 7. So we're going to have our max minus our min eventually. And then we're going to be able to figure out, based on taking whatever we have here and dividing it by k, what the approximate start width will be for age, and then what is our starting width for income. All right, let's do a little double click in between the two columns here so that it fits. All right, so the first thing we want to do is figure out the minimum value for age and the minimum or lowest value for annual income. So you'll use a formula by hitting equals MIN, then C returns the smallest number in a set of values, double click MIN, and then you're going to highlight all of your data. Not the label, just the numbers, and then hit enter. So the youngest person in our data set is 18. Now the cool thing about Excel is we can copy this formula over, and it's going to apply this formula to the B column instead of typing in it again. So if we just click on this 18, I'm going to make this a little bigger, click and drag over, it copies that formula over. Check it out. If we look up here, we can see it's doing the minimum for B2 through B101, whereas here it's doing the minimum for A2 through A101. It's kind of awesome. So in this data set, the lowest annual income was $3,000. Now let's figure out the oldest person in the data set by doing equals MAX, double click that, highlight all the numbers for age, hit enter. Now an easy way to highlight things without clicking and dragging is to click the bottom, hold down the shift key, and click the top, and it'll highlight them all as well. Just want to show you that shortcut. So just as we did for the minimum, we can click and drag this formula over with the little plus sign that appears if you go to the bottom right of the cell. And the highest income in this data set is $90,000. Now we're going to take the max minus the min. So here we're going to do equals, click on our max, minus, click on our minimum, and hit enter. Now we can do this over here, I believe. Let's see. Let's see if it works. Oh, it totally worked. So 9,000 minus 3,000, or sorry, 90,000 minus 3,000 is 87,000. Nice. So now we need to figure out kind of the beginning of our start width. We're going to take, so equals, the max minus min for age, which is 66, and divide that by k, which is 7. Hit enter. Now for income equals the max minus min for income divided by k, which is 7. Now these are ugly numbers to work with. I definitely don't want to have all of my groups be a width of 9.42857. Yuck. So what we're going to do is we're going to change that to a multiple of 2, 5, or 10, which clearly in this case we're going to go with a width of 10. And then for income, you see we've got like $12,428.57 would kind of be the starting width. But let's go ahead and change that into a multiple of 5, and let's make our width 15,000. So you'll find that the prep work for group frequency distribution tables is way more difficult than actually creating them in Excel. But if you go through this process with your variables, you're going to have a really, really good idea of what values to enter once you start grouping your variable. So we are going to have for age, the width is going to be 10, and for income, the width is going to be 15. Now we also have to consider the fact that the youngest person in our data set is 18. So if we're going to do a starting width of 10, we need to have our starting point for age, and actually we can do this, starting point, end point. Let's double click this. Let's put age and income. So we're just really kind of graphing out all the things that we're going to need to know when we actually use the pivot tables to group this. So the starting point for age, in order to capture 18, is going to need to be 10. So the first group will be 10 to 19, the next group will be 20 to 29, so on and so forth. And the endpoint for age, since our oldest person is 84, is going to probably need to be 89, because the group 80 to 89 will capture that oldest person. So now let's think about the starting point for income. If we're going to be counting by 15,000 and our smallest income, our lowest value is 3,000, we're going to need to start that at 0. And then if we think about our endpoint needs to capture this 90,000. So if we think about the fact that we're doing it in 15,000 increments, we can just go ahead and put this as 90,000. 1, 2, 3. And that should work out nicely. Okay, let's go ahead and create our tables now that we have this basic information. So let's go ahead and actually we can go here, and let's just start with age. So you just want to do one variable at a time if you're trying to group things. If you try to do multiple variables at a time in the pivot table, it's not going to work. So I'm just going to copy age, all the numbers for age, Control C to copy, create a new tab by clicking the little plus sign, double click, write age, enter, and then Control V to paste. And let's go ahead and steal annual income. I'm going to click the bottom value, go up all the way to the top, hold shift, click the top value, Control C to copy, go down here to the plus tab for a new sheet or new tab, Control V to paste. Now you see these little numbers popped up. That's okay. That just means the cell's too small. Go up here, double click, and voila, there's your annual income values. And let's just go ahead and double click this and name this income. All right, so let's create a grouped frequency distribution table and histogram for age. And we're going to do a histogram because age is a ratio variable, and when you have interval or ratio variables, you do a histogram, whereas if you have nominal or ordinal variables, you use a bar chart. So let's go ahead and let's highlight age, click Insert, Pivot Table. See, it's already highlighted there. And we actually want to do this in this worksheet. So let's click Existing Worksheet, then click in this box that says Location, click on a cell, maybe D1, and then hit OK. So now our table is going to be right next to our data. So if you've got your cursor in this table, you'll see over here that it's showing up the pivot table fields. So you would click and drag age to rows, and then click and drag age to values. And let's make sure we don't have any blanks. Oh, we do. So let's just click this little arrow and get rid of the blank. All right. So as you can see, this isn't very useful, especially if you followed the conventions that you should follow for a frequency distribution table, and you have every value in between the highest and lowest, even if it has a frequency of 0. You're going to have a ton of rows here. So let's use the pivot tables to group these. So we're going to right-click and then go to Group. So you'll right-click the age values, go to Group, and remember, based on the prep work that we did over here, we are going to start at 10 for age and end at 89. And we are going to be counting by 10. So let's click OK. And let's go ahead and get rid of this less than 10 or blank. We can get rid of that. We don't need that. And boom, you've got a grouped frequency distribution table. How beautiful. Let's go ahead and turn this into a histogram as well. So click into here. Go to the Analyze tab under Pivot Table Tools, Pivot Chart. Let's go ahead and select the column. Click OK. This is a bar chart, not a histogram, so let's play with the formatting a little bit. Let's go to the Design tab, Quick Layout, and select the one where the bars touch, Layout 8. Cool thing about this is it gives us our axis titles as well, so we don't have to use this to get those. I'm going to take this total and I'm going to change it to be more descriptive and put age of customers that were sampled. All right. Down here, we have age. And then over here, we have number of customers. Oh, how nice. Now, if you copied and pasted this into like a report for Word, it's going to get rid of these and it's going to look really nice. And you can play with the design there or here. Just kind of mess around with it. Make it look however you want. Why not? So now let's create the grouped frequency distribution table and histogram for income. So let's go over here and click this A to highlight all this data. Go to Insert, Pivot Table, Existing Worksheet, and then just choose a spot that you like and click OK. Now something weird happened here. It says age, not income. Not sure why, so let's try a different strategy. Get rid of this. Get out of here. Right click, delete. This time, instead of just clicking A, let's highlight all of these values. Just like that, including the word and annual income. Go to Insert, Pivot Table, Existing Worksheet, choose a location right here, and then click OK. That worked. I don't know why, but I'm not going to question it. So here we go. Move annual income to rows and annual income to values. Make sure we don't have any blanks, which we don't. We're good to go. And let's do the grouping again. So right click, group. Now remember, we decided that we were going to, on the other worksheet, start our width for age. Our width for age was going to be, our width for income was going to be 15,000. And we realized that to get the smallest value, that 3,000, we needed to start with 0. And then our highest value is 90,000. So let's go ahead and click OK. And check it out. There we go. So technically this breaks a rule a little bit because you can see that all of these groups are a width of 15,000. And then when you get here, it's like a width of 15,001 basically because we've got that 90,000 captured there. So technically you could have set your highest value to be a 104,999 to have another row here. But I hate to do that because it really is going to just be one there and it's such a wide range that goes far above and beyond this 90,000 that I went ahead and opted to have this one be one bigger just to include that 90,000 in it. So if you did this following the conventions, the next category, this would be 75,000 to 89,999 and then you'd have one below that's 90,000 to 104,999. But I think that would just be a little misleading because it would make it look like people are making a lot more than they are because technically the person in this group would just be at the very low end. So it's really up to you what you want to do, but this is the decision I made on this one. So before we finish, let's go ahead and do our pivot graph, our pivot histogram here. So click on this, go to Analyze, click Pivot Chart, Column. Let's fix this up. This is going to be annual income of customers. Get rid of that. And let's go ahead and add our axis titles. Oh, nope, we got to fix it, make a histogram. So let's go to Design, Quick Layout, make it a histogram. Let's kind of stretch this out a little bit so there's room to show each income group along the x-axis. And let's label this annual income. And then here we'll put number of customers. And before we're done, we need to make some quick edits to these tables. So this needs to say annual income. And this needs to say number of customers. Same thing for age. This will be age, and then this will be number of customers. Do a little double click action so that it fits, and this one already fits. All right, so I hope you enjoyed learning about how to create grouped frequency distribution tables and graphs in Excel. And just keep in mind that this prep is the hardest part. Figuring out which exponent of 2 gives you a value greater than or equal to the sample size, and then determining all this stuff down here. That's the hardest part. Once you have that figured out, you can go over here and you can make it happen. Now, if you try to do the grouped frequencies with the default it gives you in Excel, it's not going to follow the conventions for an appropriate grouped frequency distribution. So you need to do the legwork up front to make sure that your table looks good. It has the low end of each column is a multiple of the width, right? This increases by 15,000. All of these are the same width with a little exception here, and you have an appropriate number of groups.